This is the Well Within podcast for women who are tired of managing, striving and second guessing and are ready to reclaim their power. I'm Jackie.
And I'm Ellie. We're a mother-daughter helping women reconnect to their innate power, even when life is chaotic, challenging and uncertain.
This isn't another self-improvement podcast. It requires readiness and willingness to go to the edge of something different and new, and to notice what's hiding in plain sight.
This space invites you to return to who you were before the world taught you who to be.
And reconnect to your well within.
Because when women reclaim their power, anything becomes possible. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Well Within podcast. We have the lovely Maria Morgan with us here today, and the theme of the podcast is around body image. So yeah, I'll pass over to you, Maria, just to introduce yourself and a little bit about the work you do in this area.
Sure. So I'm Maria. I'm 48. I live in Surrey. And for most of my life, I struggled with body image and disordered eating. And a few years ago, I recovered. So I now try and support other people who are still struggling.
Yeah. Amazing.
Lovely. Thank you, Maria. And so lovely to meet you again. Yeah, I know that you and Ellie have met each other before on Angus and Rahini's rewilding program. But yeah, it's so lovely to meet you again. Yeah, I mean, gosh, this feels so huge and can be any age, any, sort of, part of our lives. And I think, for us, we'd love to hear a bit more about your experience with suffering and your body image and what brought you to this. And what did it look like then compared to what it feels and what it looks like now?
Yeah, sure. So I don't know exactly when it started. I think, I don't know, maybe just before I was a teenager or maybe around that age, I started to become conscious of, for me, it was a lot about being thin. I know it manifests in different ways for different people, but for me, it was a lot about being thin. I began to become aware that seemed really important for everything, for happiness, for respect, for obviously being attractive, for having attention. Yeah, so I began to become aware that was really important and that I didn't quite measure up. And I think prior to that, I'd sort of been doing some comfort eating because I'd been a bit stressed with school and home life. And so I probably wasn't skinny, or I wasn't particularly big either way. But it suddenly became a massive preoccupation that I thought I needed to change my body. And really, that sort of stayed with me for about 30 years. Although I started with the comfort eating, I think that's what kept an eating disorder in place for such a long time. And I didn't realize that. I thought I was greedy and I had a problem with food. So it was a massive sort of revelation to me when I let go of this body image pressure that my eating disorder essentially disappeared. So anyway, what it was like before, that's the question. It was like this constant pressure all the time, because eating something that you do every day and then it affects what you look like. Every meal is kind of like a test. Am I going to pass the test? Am I going to fail the test? Am I going to do well today? Every day I would weigh myself. That was like my God, essentially. It's like, am I doing well in life? The scale will tell me. And I got a sense of safety from that as well, because it was more controllable than feelings and, what's going on in the world, that huge life to navigate. Whereas this is very clear. Are you doing well? Are you doing badly? Then you know what you've got to do. So in practical terms, I went through different phases with eating. So sometimes I was completely out of control, couldn't stop eating, gaining weight. But then for more over the years, everything was rigid, very controlled. I had a lot of rules and felt a lot of pressure, but I could never really maintain that control perfectly. So even though you could say I was anorexic for many years and very, very thin, I would still binge from time to time and have those things. And then when that happened, every single time I would start thinking, how can I what is the way to exert complete control? And I would go into this obsession. So there became a obsession about the actual problem as well. Like, how am I going to fix this problem? And I went through many different ways. So first of all, you think, how am I going to change my body? What am I eating? And then I started to look more broadly about, could this be to do with my thinking, beliefs, and all of that? So there was that obsession. So that was a big part of it. It was taking up a lot of time, taking up a lot of my energy, focus my attention. So when I was with people, I couldn't really enjoy fully being with them and listening to them, being present with them, because I was always thinking about myself and what I look like, and do I look good enough, and I look terrible. And so, yeah, it distanced me from people and from the enjoyment of everyday life. So that kind of made me depressed at times, because it's just I felt oh, am I ever going to just end this battle? And I didn't for many years. It just kept going round and round in circles. So there was the obsession, kind of depression, also a bit of anxiety, because with body image, essentially, the messages we get is that a youthful appearance is the right one. But as you live, you move further away from that, right? So the future just looks terrible because you're just gonna fail more and more. And so there's that doom sense about life, because you just can't control, nature enough. So nature's got it wrong. So that's what it was like before. And particularly social events that involve food was very stressful. And I felt quite isolated because I didn't really want to talk about that. It's embarrassing. It's this pressure. So that sort of thing, or clothes, what am I going to wear? And always feeling down, like I never look good enough. And, eating in clothes is every day. So you can't really get away from it very easily. So yeah, that's kind of what it was like before. Obsession, and occasionally some highs, very short, oh, I've done it. I look amazing. Woo, look at me. But that came with an enormous sort of restlessness. It wasn't a relaxed, calm happiness, because I had this sense that I have to work very, very hard to maintain this. And also my value was coming from such a superficial place that it wasn't, that didn't bring me happiness, obviously. It was more I just, I'm not failing the test today, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what it was like before. And now it's just such a non-issue. Like before, I wanted compliments and I feared insults. And now I don't care about either. I'm much more secure in myself. And so yeah, it's the eating disorder's gone, I would say, really. I'm much more comfortable in my body. I'm not, what's the word? So I talk about seeing through a filter of judgment. And I don't know if you can completely get over that. So we've got all this conditioning that says this is beautiful, this is ugly. So I don't look in the mirror and think I look beautiful a lot of the time. But I know that filter's there. So I feel something that I can't necessarily see. And so I don't feel like, in the past, if people would say, oh, this person, they look so good, that person, they look terrible, I'd feel like, oh, no, it's all true, it's all inevitable, and I don't measure up, or maybe I measure up today, but I won't tomorrow. Whereas I just feel free of that, which makes me more hopeful, even though this is pretty disastrous culture. I feel quite hopeful because I feel free, so I feel like I can share that. Yeah, so that's sort of a bit of a before and after. I never weigh myself now.
Yeah.
Thank
Feels
you.
like, yeah, just the heaviness of that before, and then the lightness of the after. Even it, sort of the way you were talking and the way you came across, it was just like this almost like this whole thing is lifted, and you've actually been able to see through it, and actually that's not who you are. And I can really, really resonate with a lot of what you were saying. I experienced something similar when I was, it was probably when I was around 17, 18. And yeah, I think it was around the period my first boyfriend had just broken up with me, and it was exam season, and there was just so much going on, and everything felt so heavy. And I think for me, it was like the same sort of thing, is that I can't control all of those external circumstances. So what can I control is my body, what I put into it, my food. So I, yeah, became super rigid about what we were eating. I'd taken over cooking and the meals. I wouldn't let my mum do anything. And yeah, again, it was that validation of you looking in the mirror and being like, yeah, I've lost weight, or I'm feeling like, yeah, I look better. So yeah, I can really resonate with a lot of what you were saying. But was there, would you say, a specific moment or experience that sort of brought you to this conversation about who we really are and the experience of being human?
Yeah, so I think, like I said before, although I was always trying to fix my body, I had some awareness or a big interest in, could there be something else beyond this? Like I knew I was trapped, and so I really was interested in freedom. So from quite a young age, I started reading self-help books and getting benefit from that, to be honest with you, like just hearing different perspectives beyond my own. And I read some books as well about beauty industry and pressures on women and feminism. And I think that all kind of helped as well to see what was shaping my experience. And then, so the first thing that I did sort of like to help myself, or one of the big things, is I went to 12-step meetings. You know, they have Alcoholics Anonymous, and then there's all these other ones now. And there's one called Overeaters Anonymous. And that's for people, you don't have to overeat, any problems with food. So I went there and I found that really helpful, because what I found was that there was something in that group that could help me do something that I couldn't do myself. And they call it higher power. They let you define that as you want. But the other thing, was that I learned to express myself. So I really shut down at a certain age. I just stopped. I mean, I didn't stop talking completely, but I had two older sisters at home, and my dad was quite talkative, and I just sort of stopped talking. So there's distance happened within my family, and I became very repressed. And in those meetings, I found my voice, because one of the rules in the meetings is you have your own time. People can't interrupt you. And I really needed that, because otherwise I just wouldn't have said anything. So it was quite awkward at the beginning. It was almost like I was learning a new language, which was just the language of self-expression. And I think that was an important step. Now, this is a very long journey with a lot of pieces, but being able to express myself and feeling that relief of being heard, not being judged, other people understand and they're caring and they give me attention. I think that's important as well. That really helped me. But still had some sort of forms of eating problems and body image. Later on, I came across, I don't know if you know her, she's a Buddhist psychotherapist, Tara Brach.
I think so.
She's really lovely. So she brought out a book that I think was called Radical Acceptance, which really resonated with me. And I think she was talking about the Dalai Lama, maybe in that, or maybe somebody else was talking about that, but basically saying how he was so horrified at how in the West, the way we are towards ourselves, like we live with so much self-judgment and criticism. And so this was sort of saying, you know, we don't have to do that. It was all about compassion. And that really resonated with me, because that was the absolute opposite of my way of being, in that, you know, I would just not accept. And if somebody had said accept, I would be like, don't be ridiculous. I'm going to try and change this. So that was another thing that really resonated with me. And then later on, I was doing a course, reading a book actually on binge eating, because that's what I thought my problem was. I didn't think about body image, which is interesting. So that was so invisible in a sense. Like I wouldn't have sought help for body image. I had therapy, but I didn't talk about body image, because it was kind of like, well, no, but that's just true, isn't it? Like this is better than that. and that's how you should look, and that's important. That's the way of the world. Now I've got to deal with the real problem, which is this eating. But yes, through that book on binge eating, Dr. Amy Johnson, who I'm sure you know, she was quoted. And then I discovered her book and started watching and listening to some of her videos. Didn't get what she was saying. I still don't really get what she's saying, but I like the feeling. And I think that was really powerful. And then through her, I came to Rahini because she was interviewed. I think I was in Amy's Little School Big Change, and Rahini was interviewed, and I could really just feel like I got Rahini a bit more, very kind of relatable. And so I think my sort of change happened a little bit before that, but when I heard Rahini and got involved with like the 3 principles, it gave me a language that for what I'd experienced, but also it reinforced and strengthened what I'd experienced. It kind of anchored it so that it wouldn't go away again. But I think that one of the crucial moments for me was I just thought, I'm so bored of this. I don't know if I want to live like this. There must be something different. And in that moment, I became willing to throw out my food rules. And that was like a sort of snowball effect, because it's like that was my framework for a safe life. And when I
Yeah.
threw that away, it was like, oh, going into the unknown. But that opened my mind to other possibilities. And then Rahini and Angus, they had this rewilding community. Ellie, were you in the
Yes.
community? You were,
Yes.
yeah, because I know we did the training together. So I was in that a few years, however long it lasted, and that really helped me in so many ways to connect with what's important. I guess that's a lot of the healing, is just realizing this stuff I'm fixated on, I don't care about it. That's what's so strange. I don't care about it. And then it was just living in alignment with that.
That's lovely. I can hear that, and I think for myself as well, seeing it more and more, that I don't know, there's like an intention. It feels such a long journey, and it feels there's so much turmoil and so much kind of suffering, and you think, gosh, I don't know. For me, sometimes I think, God, I've wasted too much, so much time. I've got to this sort of age, and gosh, But I don't know. I'm kind of seeing now that there's this sort of intentionality to this suffering. It's almost like we have to be kind of brought back constantly to see who we really are. And then we think, well, gosh, why do we have to suffer so much? Once we kind of see that the journey is, like we say, bringing us to something, every time I hear that you're seeing something deeper, you're seeing something, you saw something, and then that moved you to something else, and that was perfect for that moment, perfect to reveal again another layer away from the entanglement of the self, the image that you were kind of holding so rigid for so long. And yeah, I think when something feels so solid and so real and so, well, it just feels like that's who we are, that's our identity, and that's it, and we have got to kind of do everything we can. It's like we're on a mission to keep that in place, and if anything sort of disturbs it or whatever, we've got to then keep it there. And then when you kind of start to really sit back and see what is actually going on, to me, it's got to a stage where it's actually quite humorous and quite sort of laughable. At the time, it's not. It's absolutely awful. And I think, I mean, obviously, I can only talk for myself as a woman, but it seems that women of all, like I said at the beginning, of all ages and all kind of areas and transitions in life, have this issue with how they are identifying with this body. And even those that you would look at to be, and you think, gosh, they look really confident, or they're really accomplished, or they're really, they've got it together. But as soon as they kind of go home at the end of the day and shut that door, there's this sort of, oh my gosh, I have to prop myself up. I have to build this image back up again for the next day to go, to go and face the world. Yeah, I can see how that, well, now I can see how that was for me. I didn't see it at the time because I was lost in the soup. I was just completely, yeah, lost. Yeah. So why do you think then? I mean, you have touched on it a bit, but why do you think that it is more kind of this issue is more around women rather than kind of men? I mean, and men do, I'm sure, struggle with it as well. But why do you think women? And what's your experience with?
Yeah. I mean, I have to say, I think it is changing. I really think it's changing. I think that or young men are now
Mm,
struggling an awful lot. They've got different standards, but they're also very, very, ridiculous. They're getting more and more ridiculous for men. I watched
yeah.
this video recently I just talked about men briefly, then I'll come back to women, but, how the male ideal in recent years has got crazier and crazier in terms of the muscularity. It's
Mm,
now like virtually impossible. But yeah, when I was growing up and previously, I think it was a bit, well, and it probably still is slightly more women, but that is changing. I kind of hoped it would go in the other direction. I wanted equality, for both genders to be happy, but it's gone the wrong way. Is the men meeting us where we were rather than we becoming more like them, which is a shame. Um, think for me, the message I got, and this is not always obvious, although sometimes it is, was that a woman's value comes from being desirable and being sexually attractive. I thought that was like the highest kind of compliment. Bit embarrassing to say that, but it was like the highest compliment, that
Not at all.
people would desire you and they would want to give you attention.
mm,
And so, because without that, it's like, well, do you matter? Are you of interest? And I think at a deep level, as social creatures, we want to be liked. Oh, that's very
mm,
basic, right? We want to be liked. We want to be cared about. We want to notice, like, if we just disappear for 2 months, someone is going to care. And that doesn't go away as you age because it's part of being human. But the problem is we get all this stuff on top that tells us that in order to be liked, in order for someone to find us attractive, and love us, we have to meet these standards,
mm,
appearance standards. And so that's where the confusion comes in. It's like, well, if I gain weight, don't meet the standards, so then I'm not attractive and therefore not lovable. And so I'm going to be lonely and unhappy forever. And that goes in so deep that even if somebody is actually in front of you, attracted to you, you can't believe it. Or you think they feel
mm,
sorry for you, or actually they'd rather be with someone else. It's like
Yeah.
I completely devalued like anything to do with myself that's about like my soul.
Yeah.
Like that somebody wants to just be with me because I'm actually a whole person. I'm not just this body that's animated, I'm not just a sex doll. Like to believe that the programming is
mm,
really intense.
mm,
So
Yes.
I think that's why that most people or most women fall prey to it to some degree, because it just feels like truth and it gets consolidated from all angles. So for example, if you hear your mum putting her body down or so apologizing, using like self-deprecating remarks or being or taking ages to get ready because she doesn't feel like she's acceptable, they're all subtle things. They're not necessarily someone telling you you look fat and disgusting, although that sadly can happen. But you pick up all of those messages and then they're coming from all angles and you're hearing all these compliments. Like, for example, when I used to wear makeup, I would get more compliments than when I didn't. People would say, you look well. But it's quite subtle, right? So then you could get the message that, well, then I look better like that. And then you have all those implications, like people want to be friends with you, or they look up to you, or they're not laughing at you, or all of those
mm,
things. So I think it's just really strong programming coming from
mm,
all angles from the moment you're born, really.
Yeah.
mm,
I also feel like there's such historical context on that as well, isn't there? It's like last night, I was watching the last episode of Queen Charlotte, and they were talking about the Queen, and she's just this basically she can't leave because her bot she was pregnant, and she was basically just this vessel, and that's kind of what they saw women as, wasn't it? It's like you're just those, you're those baby makers. That's what that's who you are. And I guess it's kind of, you can see the impact of that and how it's all passed down through the generations and how we are supposed to show up in the world, really, and the impact of that. And yeah, if we aren't then outwardly, you know, attractive or whatever, then you wouldn't maybe find a husband and you wouldn't have children or whatever. Like, not saying that's the case
Yeah.
nowadays, but
I know what you
there's
mean,
just,
because that reminds
yeah,
me of, like, in the 18th century, that's sort of like those novels about, oh, she's plain, she's not going to have a husband.
yeah,
Yeah, you're
exactly.
reminding me about that. There is a legacy of misogyny, and
100%.
unfortunately, it's on the rise again in some sectors, isn't it? The manosphere.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it is tough because we'll, like you say, if we're believing something about ourselves to be that is not true, but we will look in that direction, and that will be validated, won't it? It'll be shown to us. Well, there you go. I've not got that, and I'm not this, and here we go. But it's and it's easy to say, but what we want to say is that's not who you really are below that. But when it feels so huge and so real, we're seeing it all the time, and those little subtle little, like you were saying about makeup and somebody saying, oh, you look well, it's almost like for the identity that's huge, an identity that is needing that validation of somebody, of sort of, oh yeah, I'm okay, I'm actually okay now. And then you look the next flip over, and you look in the mirror and you think, oh my god, I look absolutely bloody awful, look so old, and da da da. But then that little, almost like that reward of, they've said I look good today, and it's just this constant like flip flop of the mind. It's just so exhausting. And until we can step
Mm.
back from that and actually see this play, this movie, this whatever that's going on here, we'll just keep kind of swimming in it. And it's almost like all the self-help stuff is, yeah, I mean, I could, my own library with self-help books. It is just, to me, it looks like now it's propping up an identity. It's going from the identity level rather than looking what's really going on underneath at the root, who we really are level. And that's kind of what I'm
Mm.
hearing where you're coming from. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that was sort of the missing piece for me. So now I feel more like, I used to be so needy, like you were saying about compliments and insults and things like that. And that is exhausting. And it's nice to be able to rest just comfortably, knowing, the way I put it is, I'm a part of life. Like, it's just unquestioned, right? So life doesn't, you can't just say life is always gets it wrong. Like, nature got it wrong. So you have to, I think, start from this assumption that life is beautiful and you're a part of it. So we
Mm.
sort of have the other sort of thing where, looking for what's wrong. And because we don't measure up to this standard, what really helped me was this, I guess it's hard to talk about, but this spiritual dimension to who we are.
Mm-hmm. Please talk about it.
It's hard to talk about, but it's because before, if you're just looking at the body and measurements, and essentially that's what it is, it's very kind of objective. And, well, the way we feel about it is not objective, but, you can measure someone's waist, right? And you can, like, living in that world is like living in poverty, isn't it? Because you don't have the richness of your soul, of the breadth of who you are. And when you're grounded in that and you feel that more fully, it's so fulfilling and beautiful that it kind of blows all these other preoccupations out of the water. And it's true in a relationship. I'm very fortunate, I'm happily married. And when you have that real love that isn't just about someone ticking some boxes on their appearance and endures, and you go through different seasons of life, and the beauty of that, you would never sacrifice that. Like, somebody's just met this appearance standard, so I'm just going to meet someone else, which is, I think, the insecure feeling we have when we're judging ourselves on those standards, like, oh, I've put on weight, so now I'm no longer attractive. So, that's the kind of way we live. But when you can experience that real love, that trust, that intimacy, then these superficial preoccupations don't feel as oppressive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. When you were just talking about, love, I think for me that we are love. Love is what we really are. And I kind of can see this. I like to, sort of see the body. The body is an instrument for life to experience life. Really, that's what it is for. And the freer and clearer the system is, without sort of all this thought and believing and that we are anything other. That's when we kind of it starts to get clunky. But having said that, there is some kind of, I'm seeing more and more this intentionality of we have to see what we're not to see what we really are.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like it's constantly, it's being set up every single time for us to, literally see that every single time we suffer. There's information in that because it's an opportunity for us to, like my mum say, reflect back what we're not. Yeah, it's almost like we talk about it. It's like you've sort of you've lost touch with your well within. It's always obviously there in the background, because we are the work, that is who we are ultimately. Yeah, it's those times when we are caught up, we are identified with, yeah, with life, what's going on around us, and we're not sort of present to who we actually are. That's when the sort of the suffering does creep in, but it's an opportunity to always come back.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was important to talk specifically about, what you're saying, what we're not. So this body image problem, because there's so much shame around it, it can make it seem like it's an exception somehow. Like everybody always thinks that, don't they? But like beauty is just like a fact and it's fixed. And this is what it looks like. It looks like a supermodel. And I needed to actually look at that and really examine that and hold that up to the light to realize that wasn't the whole truth. So I think they sort of work in unison, that those two things.
Yeah, perfect.
Definitely.
Yeah, lovely.
So I think you kind of touched on this in what you just said earlier, but what do you sort of feel is possible when obviously those limiting beliefs and all that suffering associated with, your body image and your value coming from external rather than you internally coming from within? When you see the truth of who you really are and your true nature, what's become possible for you?
Yeah, so obviously it's taken the eating disorder away, which is really nice. It's changed my relationship with exercise as well, because it used to be very punitive and sort of something I would suffer through to try and change my body. Whereas now it's more like self-care and it's fun, because I do think it's important. We have to take care of our bodies. It's just where, the place that you're coming from to do that can make such a difference to whether you're happy or not.
Yeah.
And just being more present with people. And I mean, also, while I was in the community, I started writing poetry. So basically, it's like allowed me to be more of myself. And, there's a lot of joy in that. And and really, I love daily life, It could sound quite boring, but I love my family. I love being a mum. Yeah, so it's made life feel less like a trap. I felt so suffocated and like I've got to control this body so much, and not having that, it's like worlds come into color, from black and white. It's like in The Wizard of Oz. And I think, like you both been saying, there is a link between that suffering and the freedom, because you appreciate it a lot more, maybe. And also, because I suffered a lot in that area, it's made me more radical. So I would say probably I'm more free now than someone who didn't suffer as much, because I was forced to look at it so I would let it go. And so now I really see beauty everywhere. So, before I was very conditioned, like, oh, someone looks older or a certain way, they're asymmetrical features, whatever. But I can enjoy looking at, a wide range of people. So I don't have that nastiness that narrows everything and constricts everything. and makes you feel sorry for people because they don't measure up. So it's a warmer, more loving lens. Well, I call it the lens of love. And it makes life feel safer because you're not feeling that judgment that you fear.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do too. It's almost like you don't need that external sort of safe, that validation of safety. We know that fundamentally we are safe. It's almost like what I'm hearing is you've got the space now and the capacity to just allow life to live you and to be, you know, to move through life instead of completely kind of vigilantly managing. It's like, right, there is all this out there, and bring it, you know, bring it on. And yeah, and even just as you kind of touched on that from what you, when you started talking at the beginning about the struggles, your face, it was just like, yeah, you lit up, and you could really feel that energy of that shift and that change in what has been possible when we've not got all that heaviness and weight and believing something that isn't true, but it is very, 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 very hard to see through. But I'm kind of hearing from you that that is possible. It is possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so hopeful because I did feel like it was my identity, you know, like that I had those problems and that I would just have them forever. And now they do feel quite distant. Like I have to make an effort to remember, even though it was 30 years, I have to make an effort to remember what it was like.
Yeah. And I think because it's something when it's been with you for that long, it does almost become so habitual. Yeah, you believe that that is just who you are because you've shown up in the world every single day and you've done those things and you've been managed and it's all about, you know, the control and your frameworks and everything. And then you sort of, that just becomes so rigid and almost like your life is in this little neat box that you think you can control. But then it's like you said it earlier, it's like you got so bored of that just looping and looping, and then actually you decided, I don't want to do this anymore. And I think it does take people to kind of come to that point, and it sounded like you'd done things up until that point, but it wasn't quite. And like you said, it's like we're talking about you having to actually experience the suffering to be able to move through it. A lot of those sort of surface level self-help stuff, they all do kind of just play around and more like rearrange the surface rather than actually get to like the root cause of what's kind of going on and where this identity has kind of been built, and yeah, this belief system has come from. And until kind of that is seen, I think people do just loop round and loop round. And I think that is also why we talk about this understanding. It's not the most sexy because people don't really want to, you know, have to go through that discomfort. But unfortunately, it's like it's really the only way to move through and yeah, come out the other side and experience yeah, the life in the way you've just
Yeah, it's hard for, just quickly, it's hard for someone who basically has such a strong association in their mind between happiness and looking a certain way. If you really believe that, you don't want to give up trying,
no.
or you're not interested in anything that's not to do with changing your body because it's just like a waste of your time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what I kind of hearing that boredom, and I felt that myself, it's just got really, really boring. And it probably did get quite boring a while back, but I didn't have the capacity to actually hear that then. It kind of needed to keep playing out until it was like, no, this is boring. This isn't what this is really. Let's look at, and then the peeling away. You know, I always love Michael Neal's sort of peeling away of the layers of the horse shit and the nail varnish, and then we've got this diamond in the middle, which is what we always already are. But it's just so scratchy and foggy that the thickness, and I think especially in areas that feel like, you know, you've been describing, feel so huge, that that fog and that thick layer is so thick, and we can't see through it until we hear something, we have a conversation in this sort of direction, or we read a book, or we see a quote, or there's just something that the system says, there's something different here. Maybe I don't need to keep going on this treadmill. Let's look at something different. Yeah. This, as we say, the conversation is just hopefully people will kind of think, what are they talking about here? This is a bit different.
Meet people halfway as well, because sometimes, you know, people are in different phases, aren't they? And they just, sometimes you need something that you can kind of wrap your head around a little bit.
Absolutely.
So it can happen in stages. Yeah. And I think also people can also then feel defeated if they don't sort of have an amazing immediate transformation, like they're doing something wrong, and that thinking can really get in the way as well.
It's not a quick fix, is it? So it's hard. Yeah, this process is hard to kind of stick with it, but it's worth it.
Yeah, and other people can help us as well, I think.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think for me, definitely those people have become the people that I kind of, as there's more clarity and there's more space to be able to kind of really see what's sort of going on, it's like the people that can help us are the approach, you know, the right people, or the next sort of stage of our kind of this transformation, this movement is the obvious person, rather than, oh my gosh, you know, grabbing it for, you know, just the change in that is coming from that sort of identified control. But it's more like, oh my gosh, yeah, that seems really obvious to look in that direction now, or to read that book. And it's amazing, you know, for me, it's just
you can
amazing.
hear the nudges more.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, this has been wonderful conversation. And yes, thank you for your honesty and your vulnerability and your open sharing. What a beautiful, beautiful lady you are. You're absolutely wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just our last question. What does your being in, what we like to say, your well within, what does that kind of look like to you? I mean, you have kind of alluded to that quite a lot in just like a sentence, maybe.
I think part of it is experiencing more of who I am and seeing that as sacred, and not seeing that as more than it is in a kind of egotistical way, or less than it is. It's like, I have my place in the world. Life is sacred. I'm a part of life. Therefore, I do matter. Still a bit of a journey with that. But there's a beauty in it. And I guess what I really want to do, one of the things I want to do, is just try and bring more of that beauty inside of myself into the world in a very small, humble way, just in my life with the people I come across. But I have clarity around that because we're all different and we all have these different gifts and quirky things about us that we can really help other people by just being ourselves. So it's kind of like being myself more, bringing that into the world, listening within, but then bringing it into the world.
I love that. Almost like a ripple maker, like we like to talk about it. Amazing.
Beautiful ripple maker.
Well, yes. Well, thank you so much for your time, Maria. If our listeners want to know a little bit more about you, where would be the best place to send them?
Yeah, it's just my website. So it's mariamorgan.info, and they can find everything there, like my email address and everything. Yeah.
So we'll put that in the show notes for everyone as well, so they'll be able to reach out to you there. But thank you so much for your time. It's been a lovely conversation, lovely to catch up with you again.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been lovely.